What's going on, everybody? It is Daniel here once again for mobilesyrup.com, and today we are looking at an interesting device. This is a Alcatel OneTouch Idol X, and this is one of Bell and Virgin's most inexpensive quote-unquote superphones, and they derive the superphone nomenclature from a number of factors, including performance, screen size, battery life, and overall connectivity. Now, for $250, this is not going to fulfill all of those requirements, but it still falls into the superphone category for a number of reasons. And this is Alcatel OneTouch's first real push into the Canadian market in the high end, and even though this is not nearly as expensive as most other smartphones, it does try to reproduce many of those same qualities, and it does it pretty well. So let's look at some of the advantages and disadvantages to buying such an inexpensive superphone. So let's start with the screen. This is a 5-inch 1080p IPS display, and as you can see, the viewing angles are not quite as good as other products that we've tested, but it does stand up quite well when you compare them to, say, a Sony Xperia Z1. But in terms of overall quality, this doesn't quite make it. It's not so much that the quality is low. Obviously, the pixel density is quite high at around 440 pixels per inch. It's that the colors just don't seem very accurate. And when you're looking at the same color on two different screens, one that's calibrated quite accurately and one that isn't, you can tell right away that this is not in that same class. However, it's a 5-inch 1080p display. Inside we have a 1.5 gigahertz quad-core MediaTek processor with an SGX. It's a PowerVR SGX 544 GPU. So this is a kind of a third generation old graphics chip, and it's a fairly old quad-core ARM CPU, and it's not going to be as fast as many of the other Snapdragon devices on the market, but that's how they get this price to where it is. This is very, very competitive for what you get. It has 2 gigabytes of DDR2 RAM. It's got 8 gigs of internal storage, and that can be expanded up to 64 gigs with an SD slot. It does not support LTE, so this is actually an HSPA Plus device, and it does not even support dual carrier HSPA Plus, I believe. So this is only going to get you 21 megabits per second in the downlink and 5 megabits up. So we're used to Bell's high-end devices supporting LTE. This won't get you there, but it's going to be fast enough for most people. Now, it has a 13 megapixel camera on the back, and it sounds great on paper, but again, like most lower-end devices, this doesn't compete with devices like the LG G2, the Samsung Galaxy S4, the iPhone 5S, even the Nexus 5 or the Moto X would have a better camera than this. But it does take decent photos in good lighting, and the interface is actually something that I like quite a lot. Other features include a 2,000 milliamp hour battery, and that would get you through most of the day. There's a 2 megapixel front-facing camera over here, and of course this runs Android, and you can see this is a lightly skinned version of Android 4.2.2. Now, don't expect a lot of updates from Alcatel OneTouch. I doubt this will get Android 4.4. So when you're looking at devices from companies like this, others like Huawei, ZTE, you're not going to be getting frequent updates because really they don't have the resources to keep these devices updated. However, Android 4.2.2 was a pretty stable release. There's a lot of great features here, and it should support most of the apps on Google Play. Now, this is a Google Play certified device. It comes with it installed in all the other Google apps. It also comes with Twitter and Facebook. Once you sign into your Google Play account, you'll be able to update everything to the latest version. But you'll also notice that Alcatel's included quite a few stubs here, and they're in partnership with Bell, so you have things like Yahoo Weather, you have Bell's self-serve app, you have something called Screen Share, which should allow you to share this screen with a Windows PC. You also have games pre-installed, Little Big City, and there's a stub for 100% HD games, which is Gameloft and Bell's continued partnership. So there are some things here that you may want to disable in the settings, but you're not going to see a whole lot of bloatware over here. What you will see is a pre-installed widget for some of Bell's services, and you'll see some existing folders and things. The device performance I noticed right away to be a little bit sluggish. Let's take a look at some of those things. For example, if you're going to be scrolling in Chrome, for example, scrolling is a little bit off. You can see that there's some work being done by the CPU. It's not rendering nearly as quickly as one would normally expect from a high-end Android phone. But again, this isn't really a high-end Android phone. This is something that you'll be able to get for $0 on a 2-year term, or $250 outright. This makes it by far the least expensive 1080p device on the market. So you may want to consider that just by virtue of its hardware. And let's take a look at that hardware, because this is quite a well-made device. It feels really nice in the hand. It's slim. It's got very minor bezels. The soft touch backing is really nice, actually, well made, and I'll just put out a Nexus 5 in red to compare it. Now, you won't be able to see on camera just how stark the differences are. My white balance isn't quite what I'd like it to be, but you can tell right away that the OneTouch is a little bit more muted. The red is a little redder, whereas the Nexus 5 is much more orange. And you can see that they're about the same size, but the OneTouch is slightly taller. So the Nexus 5 has a little bit wider bezels, but it's also slightly shorter. Now, that's owing to the fact that the OneTouch has capacitive buttons, and that's something that even companies like HTC are getting rid of. So this is going to be sort of a legacy button arrangement here, and it's fine. It's nothing to be concerned of. You would hold down the menu button to get to the multitasking menu, for example, and holding down the home button will get you to Google Now or the search menu. So that's something as well that's a little bit different from stock Android. Everything else here is only lightly skinned. You can see that the camera interface looks fairly similar to what one would expect of a regular sort of Android device. Photos are fairly quick to take, and there's that same AOSP animation that's found on the Nexus devices. And there are a few settings that you can play with here. You have an HDR mode, a sports mode, a panorama mode. You can also adjust the picture size, which would adjust from 13 megapixels probably down to 8 or 6, and then down to 3. You have a timer, you have ISO and exposure settings. So there's actually a few things that you can do here to tweak the quality of your photos, and I'm pretty happy with the overall output here from this 13 megapixel camera. Apps, in terms of first-party apps, we have fairly customized versions of the email and calendar. Nothing really huge in their changes from stock Android, but certainly ones that you may want to keep in mind when you're purchasing this. They won't work exactly as they do on a Nexus device. Now, everything else feels fairly standard here. If we go into the menu, you see here we have a quick torch or auto brightness. We have a screensaver setting, which will turn down the brightness for you. In the settings menu, we have gestures, so you can actually turn over to snooze an alarm. You can turn over the phone to mute it, so it uses the accelerometer for that. You can shake to switch music. Nothing like a Samsung device, but it's really not trying to be. You can actually turn on something called the status bar, which will allow you to see what's going on in terms of your apps in in the status bar, which is very interesting. So all the notifications of third-party applications will be shown on the top left of the status bar. You can actually turn that on and off, and you can set that for individual apps, which is quite interesting. Other things include battery management. You have the ability to set up a saving mode, which will let you turn on or off Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS, things like that. That's pretty standard as well. So you can tweak this to your heart's desire. You can also turn it on or off at a certain time, which is interesting. That's kind of like a Windows PC. And I'm actually quite impressed by this device, which you can buy for a little bit more than the Moto G, quite a bit less than a Nexus 5. And while the device performance and quality isn't that high, for $100 less, it's quite a bargain, and especially if you're getting this on a contract, it's one of the better $0 phones that you can buy right now. So this has been a quick look at the Alcatel OneTouch Idol X, available for $250 on Bell and Virgin. Thanks so much for watching.